Learners, welcome again to our session. I am your instructor, CPA Aringo Frederick. So in our class recall, we had introduced the concept of life cycle costing, and we looked at the whole concept behind life cycle costing. So in our class today, I want us to handle an illustration question which will open our mind wide when it comes to the concept of life cycle costing. And our illustration question is going to come from our past paper, that is Advanced Management Accounting, and that should be question of November 2018. November 2018. That should be question number 3B. Question number 3, part B. So as usual, I'm going to share the question in our screen. We have a look at it, we go through together, then we try to handle that question. So the moment I've shared it in our screen, you can either take a screenshot of that question so that as we are working it out, you should be very good with it. You should be very good with it. So this is our question. This is our question. This is our question here. November 2018, question 4B, not 3B. Question 4B. Question 4B. So this is our question, my good student. This is our question. November 18, question 4, part B. Question number 4, part B. Question number 4, part B. Question number 4, part B. So this is what you are told. This is what you are told in this question, that AZK, a manufacturing company, is planning to launch a new product model whose life cycle is 3 years. The following estimated data has been provided. I'm having details for research and development, January 18, 31st December 18, 31st December 19, 31st December 20. I'm given our research and development, you're given our production cost, marketing cost, distribution cost, disposal of special equipment. Then I'm given the present value factor, 0.89, 0.80, and 0.71. Then I'm also given our production in units. You're also given our production in units. You're also given our production in units. Then, looking at that case, what were we told? That the marketing director believes that customers could only pay 120 per unit, but the finance director believes this will not cover all projected costs throughout the product's life cycle. Required, evaluate the life cycle cost per unit, comment on the target price by the marketing director, and suggest ways of reducing any cost gap. So that is the question, my good students. First of all, you are required to determine life cycle cost per unit. You know very well life cycle cost per unit. Just as normal way of determining cost per unit, first of all, I need to determine our total cost. Then we divide by the number of units given. Then we divide by the number of units. Then we divide by the number of units given. So, having that case, what will you be required to do? What will you be required to do? So, I'm waiting for you guys to take a screenshot of that question. And we start working out together. We start working it out together. So given such questions for life cycle costing, is always very simple. It's always very simple so long as we open our mind, so long as we open our mind wide, so long as we open our mind wide unto that. So let us work it out, my good students. Let us work it out. Let us work it out. Let us work it out. Believing that we've taken a shot of that question. So this is what we are told. We need to work out our life cycle costing. We need to determine the life cycle costing per unit. So having that question of ours, we are going to start with what? the cost that I was given. So I need to determine my life cycle cost per unit. So we should be having the name of the company, AK Limited. AZK Limited. This is a cost statement. Cost statement. Cost statement. Cost statement. Cost statement. So looking at our cost statement, we start with the first cost given here. I was given research and development cost. So we do have research and development cost. I need the total cost of the entire period. So that case I was given as at the beginning of the year, I can clearly see we are given 850,000. We multiply by the present value factor as at the beginning of the period, which in this case, we have 1. We are going to add, as at the end of year 1, as at the end of year 1, my cost was how much? My cost in relation to research, we have 200,000. As at the end of year 1, we have 200,000. But the question will be, what was our present value factor as at the end of that year? Our present value factor as at the end of the year, we can clearly see I was given a figure of 0.89. So by 0.89. We didn't have any other cost. So therefore, my total research and development cost will be a figure of how much, my good students. In that case, we'll be talking of research and development cost to be 850,000, 850, we are given 850, 400. 850,400, 850,400. So I'm having 850, 400. So 850,400, we multiply by 1, we add 200,000, we multiply by 0.89 to give us a figure of 1,028,400. Believing that all of us are getting that. Believing that all of us are getting the same figure. After you've talked of that case, go to cost number 2. And cost number 2, what were we given? Cost number 2, you can clearly see I was given the aspect of what? Production cost. I was given our production cost. Production cost, what did we have? We had variable cost. And variable cost, I was given variable cost per unit, right? And our main purpose will be to determine the variable cost for the whole period. It will be upon us to determine the variable cost for the whole period. So how will we determine the variable cost for the whole period? Let me share that question with you here again. So this is what we have. I want you guys to understand this concept very well. So variable cost per unit, you can see year 1, as at the end of year 1, which is 2018, 31st December, we had 100 shillings. Look at production cost, variable cost per unit, I'm having 100. And how many units are we producing for that year? Come down here where we have production units. You can see I'm having 20,000 units. So take 100 per unit times our number of units, which is 20,000. That should give us the total variable cost as at the end of year 1. Of course, I'm having our present value factor, so I must take into consideration that present value factor. The same case will happen with 31st December 19 and 31st December 20 and 31st December 20. So that is what we should be having. So therefore, this is what you are going to take. For variable cost year 1, I'm having 100 by 20,000. That should give us 2 million. We multiply by present value factor 0.89. We are going to add with year 31st December 19. I'm having 80 by 20,000. That should give us 1.6 million. We multiply by the present value that year 2, which was 0.80. Then you are going to add, of course, it should give us 90 by 20 should give us 1.8. We multiply by the present value for that period, 0.71. That should give us our cost for variable cost. The same case will happen with fixed cost. For production cost, talk of our fixed cost. Fixed cost, how much was I given? Fixed cost, I can clearly see for production cost, I was given 500,000 each, right? So talk of 500,000, my good students. We multiply by the present value factor, which is 0.89. We are going to add 500,000. We multiply by 0.80. Year 2, we take 500,000. We multiply by 0.71. Year 3. So that is under production cost. The other cost component given, we had what? Marketing cost. We had marketing cost. We had marketing cost. We had marketing cost. So for marketing cost, the same concept will apply. The same concept will apply. We come and take the marketing cost. I'm having variable cost per unit. Variable cost per unit. So I'm having the variable cost per unit, which year 1 I was given 12 shillings, right? 12 shillings by the number of units which you produced in year 1. So I should be talking of 12 shillings per unit by 20,000. That should give us 12 by 20,000 to give me a figure of 240,000. So you should be talking of 240,000 by present value, which is 0.89. We are going to add 8 by 20,000 to give us 160,000 by 0.80. We are going to add, my good student, that should give us a figure of how much? That should give us year 3, I'm having 10 by 20,000. That of course should give me 200,000. We multiply by 0.71. Fixed marketing cost. Fixed marketing cost. Fixed cost. The same concept will apply. For fixed, I was given year 1, I was given 200,000 by 0.89. Year 2, I was given 150,000 by 0.80. Year 3, I was given 100,000, believing that you have a question right, by 0.71. And that's why I mentioned you should have taken a screenshot of the question. Then in that case, I'm done with marketing cost. What about the other component of cost given? The other component of cost given, my good student, you are given what? You are given distribution cost. We are given distribution cost. We are given distribution cost. So I'm having our distribution cost here. Distribution cost. Looking at our distribution cost, what were we given? For distribution cost, I was given a figure of 120,000 all through, because that is fixed cost all. Under distribution, we only had fixed cost. And in this case, for fixed cost, I'm given 120,000 shillings all. So I'm having 120,000 by 0.89. We add 120,000 by 0.80. We add 120,000 by 0.71. By 0.71. So that is what I'm given in regard to what? In regard to the aspect of a distribution cost. Then the last cost given, we are given what? Disposal of special equipment. So I'm having disposal cost. Remember, amongst the stages or phases that we talked about life cycle, we had talked of the end of life. And for end of life, we talked about disposal costs. So for disposal cost, what were we given? Disposal costs, we are given year 3. Year 3. So I'm given 300,000 year 3. So I'm given 300,000. So we're going to have 300,000 here by 0.71 because that was in year 3. So determine our total costs at this point. Determining our total cost at that point. What should we be having? I'm going to have the first case you're going to have. So just sum it up because I know by now you must have done it. So 2 million by 0.89. We are going to add 1.6 by 0.80. We are going to add 1.8 by 0.71. So in this case I'm having 4,338,000. That's the figure that I'm getting. Unless you're getting a different figure, maybe yours is correct. 4,338,000. The other case, we're talking of 500,000 by 0.89. We are going to add 500,000 by 0.80. We are going to add 500,000 by 0.71. So therefore, we should be talking of 1.2. I'm getting a figure of 1.2 million. For marketing, talk of 240,000. We multiply by 0.89. We are going to add 160,000 by 0.80. We are going to add 200,000 by 0.71 to give me a figure of 483,600. Correct? What about the other one? You should be talking of 200,000 times 0.89. We are going to add 150,000 by 0.80. We are going to add 100,000 by 0.71. So in that case, I'm having a figure of 369,000. That's the figure that I'm getting. Then talk of fixed cost here. We should be talking of 120,000. We multiply by 0.89. Talk of 120,000. We multiply by 0.80. We take 120,000. We multiply by 0.71 to give me a figure of 288,000. Then the last one, you're talking of 300,000. We multiply by 0.71. In this case, I'm having 213,000. So what about our total cost, my good students? What about our total cost? So therefore, my total cost should be 213 plus 288,000 plus 369,000 plus 483,600 plus 1.2 plus 1.2 plus 438 plus 1028, 400. So in this case, I'm getting a figure of 7,920,000. This is the figure that I'm getting, 7,920,000. 7,920,000. The question here, we are asked about life cycle cost per unit. We are asked of life cycle cost per unit. And having been asked like that, we know very well we are going to take our total life cycle cost, total life cycle cost, we divide by the number of units. We divide by the number of units. So therefore, my total life cycle cost here, we have determined it to be 7,920,000. We divide by the entire number of units. And the entire number of units, you can clearly see we had 60,000 because we had 20,000 each year. We had 20,000 each year. If you can recall, this is what we had. This is what we had. Can you see? Under production units, here I'm having 20,000 as at the end of 2018, 20,000 as at the end of 19, and 20,000 as at the end of 20. That is production units. And that's why you are taking to be 60,000 for the entire period. 20,000 by 3. So having that case, we divide by 60,000. So therefore my aspect of life cycle cost per unit, I'm getting it to be a figure of 132. I'm getting that one to be a figure of 132 shillings, sorry, per unit. So in that case, we've done with the first part of the question, life cycle cost per unit. Just see how simple it is. Just see how simple it is. So long as you've grasped the concept right, and you have the concept since the beginning of this concept, you'll find that working out these questions, ideally, they'll be very, very simple for us. So the moment you're done with that, to go to the second bit where we are asked, comment on the target price by the marketing director and suggest ways of reducing any cost gap. So marketing director had suggested that the customers could only pay 120 per unit, but the finance director believes that this will not cover all the projected cost, right? So the moment you do have that case, my good student, what I should recall the moment I've seen like that is, ideally, I'm just comparing these costs. And in comparing these costs, in a simple term, maybe you can comment and say, because you're asked to comment, right? You're asked to comment. So in commenting, we can say that life cycle cost per unit is higher than the target price per unit. Is higher than the target price per unit. So we can clearly see that our life cycle cost per unit here, I'm having 132. And the target cost, or the target price examiner, according to the market director, the target price, the customers were willing to pay 120 per unit. So you'll find that ideally, as at this point, you can clearly see that my life cycle cost is higher already than the target price. Is higher already than the target price. So therefore, that's why you are going to take it as, that's why you are mentioning that at this point, this component is higher. The target or the life cycle cost is higher than the target cost, is higher than the target cost. So that is what you are told to comment on that. Then, what are some of the ways that you are going to use for us to reduce this cost gap? Because you can clearly see I'm having a cost gap here of roughly like 12, right? So, in this case, what are we supposed to do for us to reduce this cost gap? What will you do? Our main aim is to reduce this cost, the life cycle cost. Our main aim is that we want it to be reduced. We want it to be reduced. So in that event, what are we supposed to do with that? What are we supposed to do with that? You'll find that one will be very simple, my good students. Because it's just a matter of us looking at the cost that we are incurring here. Say, for example, like when you're talking of, when we'll be talking of, say, like variable costs, right? For variable cost, we clearly know that variable cost will encompasses like aspect to do with material cost, talk of labor cost, right? Talk of labor cost, correct? Talk of what? Talk of our overheads. So talk of our OHDs, talk of our OHDs at this point. So you'll find that instead of us using the materials that we've used, we can tend to seek for alternative, cheaper materials. Because if we use cheaper materials, we'll find that it's going to reduce our variable cost. And as such, that one will also reduce our life cycle cost. That one will also reduce our life cycle cost. Another component that you can talk about maybe is to use cheap labor. I can source for cheap labor, which as at the end of the day, if we go with cheap labor, you'll find that it's going to reduce our cost and therefore giving us a lower product cost. So basically, looking at this question, ideally that's what you're supposed to do. And also talk of maybe use of technology. Talk of maybe adopting new technology. In such a case, you'll also find that one will also assist us to reduce that cost gap. So basically, that is what you are required to do in that question, my good student. And in that case, that will mark the end of this. I'll also want you guys to go and handle a question which was tested in November 19. If you have time, go and check a question which was tested in November 2019, question number 5. November 2019, question number 5. That one is also a good question for us to understand the concept of life cycle cost. So in our next class, again, we're going to meet another question for life cycle before we proceed to target cost. Thank you so much, and let us meet in the next session.